I was finally steady again. 8 months had passed since Victor Hale's resignation, and I'd built something new. My role as Director of Process Integrity at Meridian Systems gave me quiet respect instead of fear. Colleagues asked my opinion instead of avoiding my desk. Emails didn't make me flinch anymore. But Lila was different. Calmer, yes, but not healed. She watched me with careful eyes, like she was waiting for the ground to move again. Like she'd learned that stability could be stolen without warning. We were rebuilding trust one small conversation at a time. Therapy helped. Honesty helped more. Then my desk phone rang. Marianne Klein's name on the caller ID. She never called unless something mattered. "Alex, I need you to stay calm," she said without preamble. Victor Hale's name just surfaced in an industry compliance thread. My chest tightened. "Where?" "That's the concerning part," Marianne continued, her voice measured but tense. "He's attached to a consulting firm, a legitimate one, and they're bidding on our biggest contract renewal." The room tilted slightly. Victor wasn't gone, he'd just been waiting. "Which firm?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Apex Strategic Solutions. They're presenting at the downtown conference next week." She paused. "You should know he'll be there." I hung up and stared at my computer screen, seeing nothing. I'd thought we were safe. I'd thought exposure meant ending. But Victor had simply rebranded, found new victims, built new networks, and now he was back in my orbit. The downtown conference felt like walking into a memory I'd tried to forget. Glass and steel, polished professionals, corporate smiles that meant nothing. I arrived early, registered, accepted my badge with hands that stayed steady through force of will alone. Then I saw him. Across the atrium, standing with a small group of executives, Victor Hale looked older. Smoother somehow, like he'd refined his performance. Silver hair perfectly styled, expensive suit, confident posture. As if the previous investigation had never happened. As if he hadn't systematically destroyed people's careers for profit. Our eyes met across the crowded space. He didn't approach, didn't acknowledge me beyond the smallest gesture. He simply lifted his champagne glass slightly in my direction. A salute. A promise. A threat wrapped in civility. My stomach twisted, but I didn't look away, didn't flinch, didn't give him the satisfaction of visible fear. I turned toward the security gates, swiping my badge to enter the main conference hall. The light turned red. Access denied. I tried again. Same result. "Ma'am, there seems to be an issue with your credentials," the security guard said apologetically. Behind me I felt Victor's presence, felt his satisfaction. Someone was testing how quickly fear could return. How easily I could be made to feel powerless again. I pulled out my phone and called Marianne. "My badge isn't working." Her response was immediate. "I'll handle it. Don't move." But the message was clear. Victor could still reach me, still manipulate small details, still make my world unstable whenever he chose. I stood outside the venue, waiting for Marianne's IT team to fix whatever had been done to my access. The afternoon sun felt too bright, too exposing. "I saw what just happened," a voice said beside me. Male, calm. I turned to find a man standing a respectful distance away. Handsome in an understated way, tailored suit that fit perfectly without trying too hard, kind eyes. "You didn't deserve that," he continued gently. Whatever that was about. Something in his tone made me believe he actually understood, not just sympathy, recognition. "Thank you," I said. Carefully, he extended his hand. "Grant Mercer, I'm with Thornton Industries. We're presenting tomorrow." His handshake was firm but not aggressive, professional but warm. "Alex Morrison," I replied. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment. He didn't fill the space with unnecessary words or awkward small talk. Just presence. "The access thing happens more than it should," Grant said. "Politics disguised as technical errors. I've been there." I studied him, trying to understand why a stranger would notice, why he'd care. "It's obvious when someone's being targeted," he added quietly. "The way people don't make eye contact, the timing that's too convenient." He understood because he'd lived it. I could see it in the set of his shoulders, the careful way he measured his words. "Well, I appreciate the acknowledgement," I said. "Most people pretend not to notice." Grant smiled slightly. "Most people are cowards." As he turned to walk back toward the entrance, his phone lit up in his hand. I caught a glimpse of the caller ID before he answered. Graham Sutter. My blood went cold. Graham, Victor's consultant from the first investigation. The man who'd helped build the case against me. At home that evening, I tried to act normal while my mind raced with questions. Why would Grant Mercer have Graham Sutter's contact information? Was it coincidence? Connection? Conspiracy? I made dinner, listening to Lila talk about her day, trying to focus on her words instead of my paranoia. There was this guy at the conference, I mentioned casually while we cleaned dishes. Grant Mercer. Seemed nice. Lila's face hardened immediately. Her shoulders tensed. Another man, she said flatly. Like it was a risk calculation. A threat assessment. I understood. Carter had taught her that men could be weapons, that trust could be manufactured, that people who seemed helpful might be gathering ammunition. It was just conversation, Lila. Nothing more. She dried a plate with more force than necessary. Carter taught me something important. Everyone wants something, especially men who show up when you're vulnerable. The words stung because they were true. Victor had used that exact strategy, appeared helpful, built trust, then weaponized everything he'd learned. I'm not looking for anything, I said gently. I'm just trying to do my job. Lila nodded, but her expression stayed guarded. Protective. Then she said something that made my chest tighten. Carter texted me again, from a new number. I set down the dish I was holding. When? This afternoon. He said he wanted to apologize, said things are different now. Her voice was small, uncertain. Did you respond? No, but Mom, she looked at me with eyes that were too old for 15. How do we know when people are real? Monday morning brought a familiar poison. I arrived at work to find Quinn waiting by my office door, expression tight. We have a problem, Quinn said quietly, slipping inside and closing the door. What kind? Quinn pulled up an email thread on a tablet. An anonymous complaint filed through the company's ethics portal. About me. About my leadership style. The language was carefully constructed, professional, devastating. It claimed I was difficult to work with, emotionally volatile, creating a hostile environment through aggressive oversight. The same words Victor had used before, different mouth. Same script. When was this filed? I asked, my voice steady despite the nausea rising. Friday afternoon, right after you left for the conference. Quinn highlighted specific phrases. Alex, look at the formatting, the paragraph structure, the clinical language. I looked. My stomach dropped. It was formatted exactly like Victor's old documentation. The same paragraph breaks. The same careful phrasing that sounded objective while being subtly character-destroying. He's doing it again, Quinn whispered. But he doesn't work here anymore. How is this possible? I thought about my blocked badge. About Victor's confident smile. About the systematic way he'd rebuilt his career while I'd been rebuilding mine. He doesn't need to work here, I said slowly. He just needs access to people who do. Quinn's expression darkened. You think someone's feeding him information? I think someone's doing more than that. I pulled up my email access logs. I think someone's acting as his hands. The pattern was emerging again. And this time, I knew to watch for it from the beginning. That afternoon, Grant Mercer sent me a connection request on LinkedIn. Professional. Appropriate. I stared at his profile photo for too long, trying to read intention in pixels. His message was simple. Coffee? No agenda. Just conversation with someone who understands corporate survival. I should have declined. Should have maintained distance. But something in his phrasing felt genuine. Like he actually understood what it meant to survive professional assassination. We met at a neutral cafe downtown. Grant arrived exactly on time, ordered black coffee, and sat across from me with none of the nervous energy most men brought to first meetings. I need to be honest about something, he said immediately. I asked for this meeting because I recognize what's happening to you. I waited. I went through something similar 3 years ago. Different company, different villain. But the same playbook. Anonymous complaints, sudden concerns about leadership style, colleagues who stopped making eye contact. He took a sip of coffee. It's designed to make you feel crazy, like you're imagining patterns that don't exist. Relief flooded through me. Someone who understood, who'd lived it. How did you survive it? I asked. I documented everything, built alliances quietly, and I stopped trying to defend myself emotionally. He paused. The people orchestrating these things want emotional reactions. They want you unstable. Calm evidence terrifies them. We talked for an hour. about corporate politics, about rebuilding credibility, about the long work of recovering from public humiliation. Then Grant said something that made me freeze. Victor Hale always preferred scapegoats over accountability. It's easier to sacrifice one person than fix systemic problems. My coffee went cold in my hand. How do you know, Victor? Grant's expression shifted, became guarded. Careful. I crossed paths with him professionally, not in a way I'm proud of. What does that mean? I pressed. It means I worked in an adjacent space, saw his methods, didn't do enough to stop them. His jaw tightened. That's not an excuse, just context. He changed the subject smoothly, too smoothly, started asking about my current role, my daughter, my plans for the future, professional deflection. I let it happen because I wanted to believe his interest was genuine, because I was tired of suspecting everyone, because loneliness makes you accept incomplete answers. But that night, Marianne texted. Grant Mercer is on a board-adjacent compliance list. Old connections to risk consulting firms. Be cautious, Alex. People from that world don't always stay clean. I stared at the message, feeling something twist in my chest. Grant had been kind, supportive, understanding in ways that felt real. But he'd also dodged my direct question about Victor. And he had Graham Sutter's contact information. I wanted to trust him. Wanted to believe someone could show up without agenda. But Victor had taught me that trust was a weapon, that support could be surveillance, that the people who seemed safest were sometimes the most dangerous. I didn't respond to Marianne's text, didn't call Grant, just sat in my dark apartment and wondered if I'd ever be able to accept help without calculating hidden costs. If Victor had permanently broken my ability to trust anything that felt like safety. Lila came home late Tuesday evening with swollen eyes, and that particular set to her shoulders, that meant she was fighting tears. Where were you? I asked gently. With Carter. Her voice was flat, defeated. To get closure. I waited, giving her space to process. He said you ruined lives, Mom. The words came out choked, angry. He said Victor's going to prove it. That you're the actual villain in the story and everyone's starting to see it. I pulled her into a hug. She resisted for exactly 3 seconds before collapsing into my arms. He's lying, I said firmly. Carter is Victor's tool, just like he was before. But how does he know things? Lila pulled back, her face flushed. He knew about the complaint against you before I did. He knew about Grant. He knew about the conference. My blood went cold. What did he say about Grant? That Grant's one of them. That he worked with Victor's people. That you're being set up again and you're too blind to see it. She was shaking now. Full body tremors. Mom, what if he's right? What if we can't trust anyone? I held her tighter, my mind racing. Carter knowing about internal work matters meant someone was feeding him information. Someone with access. Someone close. Carter knows things he shouldn't, I said carefully. Which means someone's telling him, and that someone is probably the person we need to find. Lila looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. How do we know who's real? It was the same question she'd asked days earlier, and I still didn't have an answer. Wednesday morning brought a professional earthquake. A confidential internal strategy memo appeared in an industry newsletter. Our acquisition plans, budget projections, competitive analysis, everything that should have been protected. The article didn't name sources, didn't need to. The damage was done. Competitors now knew our moves. Partners questioned our security. The board would demand answers. And my name, while not printed, was heavily implied through careful phrasing. Sources close to leadership suggested the leak came from oversight positions with access to sensitive planning. I didn't panic. I traced. The memo had been stored in a secure vendor portal. Access was restricted to 3 people. Me, Quinn, and the new hire in compliance. I pulled access logs. Someone had downloaded the file at 11:47 p.m. on Friday. From an IP address that traced to the vendor portal, but with credentials I didn't recognize. Quinn appeared in my doorway. Please tell me you didn't leak that memo. I didn't, but someone with portal access did. I showed Quinn the logs. This download happened Friday night. Who was working that late? Quinn's face went pale. Sienna, the new hire. She requested weekend access to catch up on protocols. Sienna Rowe. Hired 6 weeks ago, impressive resume, eager personality, volunteered for everything. Too perfect, too fast. Pull her background check, I said quietly. Every reference. Every previous employer. Every gap. Quinn nodded and disappeared. An hour later, Quinn returned with information that confirmed my worst fear. Sienna worked at Apex Strategic Solutions, Victor's firm. She didn't mention it in her application. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Victor hadn't just returned to the industry. He'd planted someone inside our company. I watched Sienna row for the rest of that week, observed her patterns, noted her questions, tracked her movements. She was good, skilled at appearing helpful while gathering information. She volunteered to organize files, offered to help with administrative tasks, always near my desk, always listening, always documenting. Thursday afternoon, she asked if I needed assistance preparing the quarterly integrity report, the one that would include details about our new vendor security protocols. "I'm fine, thank you," I said pleasantly, "but I appreciate the offer." "Of course." Sienna's smile was bright, professional. "I just want to learn as much as possible. You're such an inspiration." The compliment felt like a knife wrapped in silk. Quinn caught up with me in the parking garage that evening. I found gaps in Sienna's background. 3 months between her last job and this one. No explanation. "Let me guess," I said. "Those 3 months overlap with when Victor's firm was being restructured." Quinn nodded grimly. "She was there during the transition. Then she applied here 2 weeks after Victor's firm won their first major contract. It wasn't proof. Not yet. But it was pattern. And patterns were what had saved me before." "Don't confront her," I said. "Just watch. Document. Let her think she's invisible." Quinn's expression was hard. "She's feeding him everything, isn't she?" "Everything," I confirmed. "Which means we need to be very careful about what information she has access to." That night, Quinn sent me one more piece of information. A text message. Just 4 words. Sienna worked with Graham. Graham Sutter. Victor's original consultant. The man whose name had appeared on Grant's phone. The web was bigger than I'd realized, and I was standing right in the center of it. Friday evening, Grant showed up at my apartment building with takeout. I hadn't invited him, hadn't told him where I lived. "I hope this isn't overstepping," he said, holding up bags from my favorite Thai restaurant. "You mentioned it in passing, and I thought you might be too tired to cook." It was thoughtful. Kind. Terrifying. Because Victor had also weaponized care, had shown up with support that turned into control. "How did you know where I live?" I asked carefully. Grant's expression shifted. "Company directory. I should have asked first, I'm sorry." He started to leave, but something stopped me. Maybe exhaustion, maybe loneliness, maybe the desperate hope that one person in this nightmare could actually be genuine. "Wait," I said. "Come in." We ate in comfortable silence. Grant didn't ask invasive questions, didn't press for information, just existed in my space without demanding anything. It should have felt safe. Instead, it felt like standing on ice, waiting for it to crack. "I need to tell you something," Grant said as he was leaving. "Victor Hale reached out to me recently." My heart stopped. "When?" "Last week, after the conference." Grant's voice was tight. He wanted to reconnect, talk about old projects. He was vague, but the timing felt deliberate. "What did you say?" I didn't respond. Grant met my eyes. "But I wanted you to know, in case it matters, in case you need to know who's circling." He left before I could ask more questions, before I could demand clarity about his connection to Victor, before I could decide if his honesty was transparency or strategy. I stood in my apartment, surrounded by empty takeout containers, and felt the walls closing in again. The photo appeared Monday morning. Anonymous post on a professional gossip forum. Grant leaving my building late Friday night. The angle suggested someone had been waiting, watching. The caption was surgical. Meridian Systems executive caught violating ethics policy. Undisclosed relationship raised conflict questions. My phone exploded. HR, Marianne, board members, all wanting explanations. By noon my inbox was flooded with concerns. Formal, clinical, devastating. Lila saw the post before I could explain. She came home from school silent, that terrible quiet that meant she was processing betrayal. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice small. Are you with him?" "It's not what the photo makes it look like," I said. "He brought food. We talked. He left." "That's what Carter said would happen." Lila's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "That you'd get involved with someone, and it would be used against you. That history would repeat." I wanted to argue, to defend, to explain that I hadn't done anything wrong, But the photo existed. The narrative was already written, and Lila had learned that truth mattered less than perception. That evening, Grant called. His voice was strained, angry. "I didn't post that photo, Alex. I would never." "I know," I said, "but did I?" "Victor's fingerprints are all over this," Grant continued. "The timing, the angle, the caption. This is his playbook." Maybe. Or maybe Grant was performing concern while feeding information to Victor. Maybe everyone was lying. Maybe my paranoia was justified. Maybe I was losing my mind. "I need space," I said, "to figure out what's real." Grant was quiet for a long moment. "I understand, but please know I'm on your side. Whatever you need me to prove that, I will." After we hung up, I sat in the dark and wondered if trust was something I'd ever feel again. Tuesday morning brought an email that made my hands shake. From Victor Hale directly. Subject line, clarification. The body was brief, polite, venomous. "Alex, we should discuss the developing narrative before it becomes inconvenient for both of us. Coffee this week? I'm sure we can find common ground. Regards, Victor." Common ground, like we were colleagues, like he hadn't systematically tried to destroy me, like the past didn't exist. I read it 3 times, feeling rage build behind my ribs. Then I wrote a response. Just one word. No. I hit send before I could overthink it. Before I could calculate the consequences. Before fear could make me accommodating. Minutes later, my phone rang. "Marianne, the board wants a meeting about you and Grant Mercer. Tomorrow at 2. My stomach dropped. On what grounds? Conflict of interest, undisclosed relationship, compromised judgment. Marianne's voice was tight. "They're treating this like the last time, Alex, building a case, the last time. When Victor had manufactured evidence, when I'd been scapegoated, when my career had nearly ended." "This is Victor," I said. "He's orchestrating this." "I know, but the board doesn't see it yet. They see a photo and questions and someone they already doubted once." Marianne paused. "You need to come prepared, with documentation, with clarity, with the same calm you showed before." I hung up and looked at my calendar. 24 hours to build a defense against an enemy who'd had months to build an offense. 24 hours to prove I wasn't the problem. Again. That evening I drafted timelines. Gathered evidence, documented Sienna's access, mapped Victor's network, built the case I hoped would be enough. But deep down, I knew. Victor wouldn't have moved unless he was certain he could win. The board review room was ice and glass, familiar in the worst way. I sat at one end of the long table, facing 7 executives who'd already made up their minds. Grant wasn't allowed in the bay room. "Conflict witness," they'd said. Marianne sat to my right, her expression professionally neutral but eyes sharp. The board chair, a man named Preston, opened with fake concern. "Alex, we're here to discuss some troubling developments. No accusations, just clarity. Translation, we're building your exit strategy." "I understand," I said calmly. Preston slid a folder across the table. "We've received documentation from Apex Strategic Solutions regarding your professional conduct and potential conflicts of interest." My pulse spiked. Victor's firm. Sending documentation about me to my own board. The timeline they've provided raises questions about your judgment, your relationships, your ability to maintain appropriate boundaries. He opened the folder. Inside were emails. Clipped, rearranged, dates shifted slightly, meaning twisted. It was artful. Constructed to look like evidence while being pure manipulation. Messages between me and Grant taken out of context. Calendar entries made to seem secretive. Vendor access logs formatted to suggest impropriety. "May I verify sources?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Of course," Preston said. "But we felt it important to review." "Preston," Marianne's voice cut through the room. "One of these emails is from Alex's account, and according to our system logs, it shouldn't exist." Everyone went still. "What do you mean?" Preston asked. Marianne pulled up her laptop. "This email is dated 2 weeks ago, but Alex's sent folder doesn't contain it, and the routing information suggests it was sent from an external server spoofing her credentials." The room shifted. Uncertainty crept in. I added quietly, "Someone created these communications. The same way someone leaked our strategy memo. The same way someone posted that photo. This is a systematic attack." Preston looked uncomfortable, but not convinced. "These are serious allegations, Alex." "Yes," I agreed. "They are." The meeting continued for another hour. Each document examined, each timeline questioned, each piece of Victor's manufactured evidence slowly revealing its flaws. But doubt remained. I could see it in their expressions. The lingering question of whether I was victim or perpetrator, whether my paranoia was justified or delusional. "We'll need time to investigate further," Preston said finally. "In the meantime, we recommend administrative leave." "No." Marianne's voice was steel. "You recommended that last time, and it nearly destroyed an innocent person's career. If you're investigating, investigate the source. Apex Strategic Solutions. Their methods. Their documentation practices." Preston shifted uncomfortably. "We can't just—" "Yes, you can," Marianne interrupted. "And you will. Because if this board scapegoats Alex Morrison again while ignoring systematic manipulation, I'll personally ensure every detail becomes public record." The threat hung in the air. After the meeting, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, shaking, not from fear, from exhausted fury. That evening, Grant called. I answered. "They showed me fabricated emails," I said without preamble, "from my account, except I never sent them." Grant was quiet for a long moment. "Alex, I need to tell you something. The truth. All of it." "I'm listening." "Years ago, I worked in risk consulting, corporate crisis management. We help powerful executives clean up messes." His voice was tight. "Victor used our firm. I hated the work, hated what we enabled. So I left, quietly, before I became the next person sacrificing ethics for profit." My hands tightened on the phone. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I was ashamed, because I thought my past didn't matter if my present was clean." He paused. "I was wrong, and I'm sorry." "Did you help Victor target me?" "No, God no, I left before your situation." But what?" "But I know how he operates. I know where he hides evidence, not literal bodies, professional ones." Grant met me at my apartment. Lila was at therapy, so we had privacy, time, space for truth. He brought a flash drive. "This is everything I kept from my time at that firm. Call it insurance, call it guilt, but I documented their methods because I knew someday it would matter." I plugged the drive into my laptop. Inside were folders, dozens of them. Client names, project timelines, methodology documents, and one folder labeled Hail Victor, Pattern Analysis. "I tracked his cases," Grant explained. "The people he targeted, the timelines, the manufactured evidence. I couldn't stop it then, but I could record it." Inside were profiles, 8 different people across 5 years, each one scapegoated before audits, each one labeled unstable, each one forced out quietly with NDAs. The pattern was undeniable, systematic, professional, monstrous. "Why are you showing me this now?" I asked. "Because you're number 9. And because this time, I can actually help stop it instead of just documenting it." Grant's expression was raw, honest. "I didn't know he'd target you specifically, but when I saw him at that conference, saw how he looked at you, I knew, and I couldn't stay silent again." I studied him, looking for lies, for manipulation, for hidden agenda. I found exhaustion, guilt, genuine regret. "If I use this," I said slowly, "it exposes everything, not just Victor, the whole system that protected him." "I know. You'll be implicated. Your career is already compromised by association," Grant interrupted. "I'd rather be part of the solution than continue being part of the problem." I looked at the files, at the documented evidence of systematic abuse, at the proof that Victor's methods were not isolated incidents but practiced strategy. "Okay," I said, "let's end this, properly." Lila came home to find Grant and me working at the kitchen table, laptops open, documents spread everywhere. She froze in the doorway. Her face went through several expressions: suspicion, anger, confusion. "What's happening?" she asked carefully. "We're building a case," I said. "Against Victor. Against the people who've been targeting me." Lila's eyes moved to Grant. "And you trust him?" It was the question I'd been asking myself for weeks. "I'm trying to," I admitted. "He's shown me evidence, given me information that could destroy his own career. That counts for something." "Or it's a trap," Lila said, her voice rising. "Just like Carter was, just like Victor was. Every time we think we're okay, a man destroys it." I stood up, walked to her, didn't touch, just stood close. "I know you're scared, I am too, but I'm not choosing Grant over you, I'm choosing truth over fear." "How do you know the difference?" She was crying now, full tears. "How do you know he's not just smarter than the others?" I didn't have a perfect answer, so I gave her an honest one. "I don't know for certain, but I know what evidence looks like, and I know what genuine help feels like versus manipulation. And Lila, if I'm wrong, we'll handle it together. She looked past me to Grant. If you hurt her, if you're using her, I'll make sure everyone knows. Grant met her eyes steadily. That's fair. You have every right to protect your mom and yourself. Lila stood there, trembling with emotion she couldn't name. Then she whispered, Show me. Show me he's actually safe. So we showed her. The files, the patterns, the documented evidence. And slowly she began to understand we might actually be fighting the right enemy this time. Quinn worked through the night, cross-referencing Grant's files with current data. Marianne quietly obtained a compliance report that Apex Strategic Solutions had buried. A report about their documentation practices, their manufactured evidence, their systematic targeting of individuals before corporate audits. The pieces formed a picture bigger than Victor. Bigger than me. A network of professionals who'd built entire careers on scapegoating. On sacrificing individuals to protect systems. On weaponizing corporate processes against people who asked uncomfortable questions. If we pull this thread, Marianne said during a secure video call, half the industry bleeds. Consulting firms, law practices, executive protection services, everyone who's enabled this. Good, I said. Quinn nodded. People need to know. But Marianne looked worried. It's also dangerous. These people have resources, connections. They'll fight back. Let them, Grant said quietly. The alternative is letting it continue. We spent the weekend building an airtight case. Timeline of victims, documentation methods, financial trails showing payments between firms, email threads revealing coordination. By Monday, we had something undeniable. A pattern so clear that dismissing it would require willful blindness. Marianne scheduled a meeting with the board's independent counsel. Not the board itself, the lawyers who protected the company from liability. They need to see this first, she explained. Because once they understand the scope, they'll force action to protect the company. It was strategic, calculated, using corporate self-interest to achieve justice. The meeting was scheduled for Wednesday, which gave Victor 2 days to make his next move. And he did. 19 Tuesday afternoon, Grant proposed something that made my stomach turn. Let Victor attempt one more manipulation, but this time with compliance monitoring, legal oversight, documentation of the methodology. You want to let him attack me again? I asked. I want to catch him in the act, undeniably, publicly. Grant pulled up a secure communication platform. We set up a monitored channel. Make it seem like you're vulnerable. Give him an opportunity to create more false evidence. That's insane, Quinn said. That's clean, Marianne corrected. It's also risky. I thought about it. About Victor's confidence, about his pattern of escalation, about how predators couldn't resist obvious prey. What kind of monitoring? I asked. Grant explained. Compliance software, legal oversight, multiple witnesses. Everything documented in real time with no possibility of manipulation. If he takes the bait, we have him. Definitively. No questions. No doubts. I hated it, hated the idea of making myself vulnerable again. But I also understood. One more documented attack. One more piece of undeniable proof. Okay, I said, but if this goes wrong, it won't, Grant said firmly, because this time, you're not alone. We set it up carefully, created a scenario where I appeared isolated, stressed, vulnerable to manipulation, left digital breadcrumbs suggesting internal conflict, made it look like easy prey. Victor bit within hours. A message sent through an encrypted channel, professional, sympathetic, designed to elicit a response he could twist. I know we've had differences, Alex, but I'm concerned about you, the pressure you're under. Perhaps we could find a resolution that protects both of us. I responded carefully, following the script we'd prepared, and every word was documented by 3 independent parties. That evening, Lila came home shaken. Carter had cornered her after school. He was waiting by my locker, she said, her voice tight, just standing there like he had every right. What did he say? I asked, moving to sit beside her. That you're a fraud, that everything you've built is based on lies, that I should ask you about Grant. She pulled out her phone, but this time I recorded it. She played the audio. Carter's voice, confident and cruel. Your mom destroyed my dad's career. Victor Hale tried to help, and she made him into a villain. Now she's doing it again, using Grant. Using you. She's the real manipulator. Then Carter said something that made everything click. Victor promised my dad a promotion if this works, a real position. Not just the contractor role he has now. I stared at Lila. Carter's dad works for Victor? That's what it sounded like. She was shaking. Mom, he said Victor's been planning this for months. That everything with Grant, with the photo, with the complaints, it's all part of something bigger. I pulled her into a hug. You did the right thing recording that. I didn't do it for revenge, Lila said quietly. I did it for clarity, so I could know what's real. That night, I sent the recording to Marianne and Grant. Along with a message. We have confirmation. Victor's been planning this systematically. Multiple players, coordinated attack. Marianne responded immediately. The panel is tomorrow. Are you ready? I looked at Grant's files, at Quinn's research, at Lila's recording, at months of documentation and evidence and systematic proof of manipulation. Yes, I typed. Let's end this. The industry panel convened Wednesday morning. Major event. Leaders from across the corporate sector, journalists, compliance officers, ethics investigators. The topic was corporate accountability in modern business. Victor's firm, Apex Strategic Solutions, was scheduled to receive an award. Ethical Leadership Excellence. The irony was almost funny. Almost. I sat in the audience with Grant, Quinn, and Marianne, watched the stage, waited. Victor walked out in a perfect suit, silver hair gleaming, confident smile in place. He accepted the award with gracious humility, thanked his team, spoke about integrity, about protecting corporate culture, about the importance of accountability. People applauded. I felt sick. Then Marianne stood up, walked calmly to the microphone designated for Q&A. Before we continue, she said clearly, I believe the audience should know about some recent findings regarding Apex Strategic Solutions. The room went quiet. Victor's smile held, but something flickered in his eyes. Marianne presented the independent audit trail. Calm, factual, professional. She outlined the pattern. 8 victims across 5 years, manufactured documentation, coordinated attacks, financial incentives for scapegoating. She showed the emails, the timelines, the methodology. Then she played Victor's monitored message to me from yesterday. His voice filled the room, sympathetic, manipulative, designed to elicit a response he could weaponize. This is how scapegoats are manufactured, Marianne said simply, through systematic psychological manipulation disguised as corporate process. I stood, walked to the microphone, added one line. My name is Alex Morrison. I'm Victor Hale's 9th target, but I documented everything, and I'm not the only one. Grant stood. Then Quinn. Then 3 other people from the audience, previous victims who'd been silent, who'd signed NDAs, who'd been too afraid to speak, until now. A journalist raised her hand. Mr. Hale, how many careers have you destroyed this way? Victor's smile finally cracked. He didn't explode, didn't shout, just stood there while the room turned against him in real time. Sponsors withdrew during the panel, literally stood up and left. Board members from various companies started quiet conversations. Partners distanced themselves publicly. This is a misunderstanding, Victor tried. His voice was steady, but his hands weren't. Selective evidence taken out of context. We have 3 independent auditors who reviewed everything, Marianne interrupted. And they've confirmed the pattern. A compliance officer stood. Mr. Hale, Graham Sutter's name appears repeatedly in these documents. As a coordinating consultant, is he still affiliated with your firm? Victor hesitated. Fatal pause. Graham works independently. Graham Sutter is listed as your director of risk management, the officer corrected. And he's currently under investigation for similar patterns at 4 other firms. The room erupted. Questions, accusations, demands for accountability. Graham wasn't in the room. Had disappeared the moment the presentation started. Smart, cowardly, irrelevant. The damage was done. Victor tried to speak, to defend, to redirect. But the room had stopped listening. The same way I'd been ignored when I tried to defend myself. The same way his previous victims had been silenced. Justice wasn't explosive. It was quiet, systematic, inevitable. As security escorted Victor from the stage, he turned toward me. Our eyes met across the crowded room. His expression was cold, empty. He whispered something. The microphone caught it. You'll regret making this public. The room heard. And in that moment, everyone understood exactly who Victor Hale actually was. 23. The fallout wasn't immediate explosion. It was slow collapse. Over the next week, everything Victor had built systematically fell apart. Apex Strategic Solutions lost every major client. Their website went offline. Partners resigned publicly. Board members issued statements claiming they had no knowledge of the practices. Graham Sutter was named in multiple ethics investigations. 3 different professional organizations launched inquiries. He deleted his online presence and hired lawyers. The other victims came forward, not just the 3 from the panel. 11 more, across different companies, different industries, same pattern. Media coverage was extensive, not sensational, factual, devastating. Corporate scapegoating, how manipulation became methodology. The cost of manufactured accountability, when protecting the system means sacrificing people. My phone rang constantly. Journalists, investigators, other victims seeking guidance. I answered when I could, directed people to resources, shared documentation templates, helped others build cases. Victor faced formal sanctions, professional certifications revoked, industry blacklisting. Criminal investigations for fraud and conspiracy. His name became a cautionary tale, a case study in systematic abuse of power, bigger than my original exposure, undeniable, permanent. One evening, after another day of interviews and depositions, I sat on my couch exhausted. Grant sat beside me, equally drained. "He actually said it," Grant murmured. "On mic, you'll regret making this public," like he still thought he could intimidate you. I leaned against him. He never learned. People like him think power is permanent, that consequences are for other people. "They were," Grant said, "until they weren't." My phone buzzed. Text from Lila. "Coming home, bringing dinner, love you." Simple. Normal. Real. I showed Grant. He smiled. "That's growth. That's survival," I corrected. "We're all just surviving." The next Sunday, Lila agreed to have dinner with Grant and me, together, intentionally. She'd been watching him for weeks, observing how he supported without controlling, how he helped without demanding credit, how he handled stress without weaponizing it against others. We ordered pizza. Sat in our small living room. Normal. Almost comfortable. "I need to say something," Grant started, looking at Lila. "I'm sorry for the fear my presence created, for the connection to Victor, for the suspicion and doubt." Lila studied him with those 2 old eyes. "Carter apologized too, before everything got worse." "I know," Grant acknowledged. "And I can't prove I'm different except through time, through consistency, through showing up even when it's hard." He paused. "Your mom didn't survive by luck, Lila. She survived by character, by refusing to accept narratives that weren't true. That's not something I taught her. That's who she is." Lila was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded, once, small but seismic. "Okay," she said, "but if you hurt her?" "You'll make sure I regret it," Grant finished. "I know, you should." Something shifted in the room. Not trust exactly, but possibility. The foundation of trust. Later, after Lila went to her room, Grant took my hand. "I don't want to be another storm in your life," he said quietly. "I want to be shelter, safety, someone you can count on." I looked at him, at the man who'd confessed his past, who'd risked his career, who'd stood beside me when standing anywhere near me was dangerous. "What are you asking?" I said. Grant smiled, nervous, hopeful. "Will you marry me?" The question hung in the air, huge, terrifying, beautiful. I thought about trust, about risk, about whether I could ever really feel safe. Then I thought about the evidence, about consistency, about the difference between performance and reality. "Yes," I said, quietly, like a promise I finally trust. The engagement wasn't public, wasn't dramatic, just a simple decision between 2 people who'd both survived professional destruction and chosen to build something new. Lila cried when I told her, happy tears mixed with residual fear. "Just don't let him leave," she whispered, "like Dad did, like everyone does." "I won't," I promised, "and neither will he." We started planning a small ceremony, nothing fancy, just us and the people who'd stood beside us. Quinn, Marianne, the other victims who'd become friends. Victor faced his final professional death quietly. No dramatic trial, just systematic consequences. Lost licenses, lost reputation, lost network. He moved to a different state, tried to rebrand. But the internet remembers, the ethics databases remember, the victims remember. His name became shorthand for corporate manipulation. A warning, a case study, a permanent stain. Carter's father lost his contractor position when his connection to Victor's scheme became clear. Carter himself faced questions about his role, about the information he'd passed, about the manipulation of a minor. He disappeared from Lila's life completely, and she grieved that. Grieved the person she'd thought he was, but she survived it. We both did. 6 months after the panel, I stood in a small garden with Grant, Leela beside me, Quinn as witness, Marianne officiating. We made promises, simple ones, honest ones, to show up, to be consistent, to choose each other daily. After the ceremony, I looked at my daughter, at my partner, at the life we'd built from the ruins of systematic attack. They tried to rewrite my story again, I said quietly. Tried to make me the villain, the problem, the sacrifice. Grant took my hand, Lila took the other. But this time I continued. I wasn't alone, and I wasn't afraid to let the world read the truth. Because that was the real ending. Not revenge, not destruction, just truth, documented, undeniable, permanent. And the quiet peace of knowing I'd survived not by becoming hard, but by staying honest.